that can help protect you. So what we're going to do tonight is, again, as Bonnie mentioned earlier, don't feel ashamed to unmute yourself and say, hey, wait a minute. Maybe start, uh, uh, talk about that again, or make sure everybody understands. So we'll just hit the highlights here, and we'll kind of see where we get to. So cybersecurity is kind of what I focus in on. I don't get into the hardware, software stuff. I just get into the human's responsibility, or those of us who use the technology. And so the graphic that you see here, obviously the world is spinning around and we're on it. And the internet is an amazing tool. It connects us all together. The problem is it connects us all together. And it's just a matter of time before we get connected to a bad person that wants to do bad things to us. And so that's kind of where I focus in my time there. So I want to hopefully build a cybersecurity foundation for everybody so everybody can understand. If you don't know what social engineering is, you need to know what that is before you leave tonight to help protect you. And obviously all this kind of stuff is going to help fortify you and help you in your business, hopefully, if you're working, and then protect yourself as well. So I like to kind of start our foundation off with some numbers here, just to kind of throw out at you. 7.8, that's billion. That number represents how many people are on Earth, right? That number goes up and down all the time. The next number that you see here is 4.7 billion. That number represents how many people are actually using the internet now. About 60% of the world now is using the internet, which is a good thing and a bad thing, I guess, at the same time. 3.7 million years are spent online every day. So it's kind of where we live our lives now, right? 75 billion devices will be connecting to the internet by 2025. That's a pretty big number. That's like your rings, your camera systems, your crock pots, your fridges, all those types of things that we're talking about will be connecting to the internet. And if it's connecting to the internet, it's a way a bad person can get in if it's not properly secured. 2.85 billion is monthly active Facebook users, and 748 million is LinkedIn users. Now, if I'm a hacker, I can find out a lot of information on just those two sites alone, pretty much where you work and what your personal life is. So please be careful of what you post out there. It might be used against you there. 2 billion people use the app WhatsApp. There's a million people using Instagram, Pinterest, all these things, Twitter, perhaps you're using those as well. All these things are connecting us together, whether we want to be connected together or not. So we'll kind of talk about how bad guys use those as well to connect to us. Another set of numbers I want you to kind of understand here that show current numbers. 1 in 99 emails are designed to do something bad, or designed to do something bad to us, you, your business. 1 in 99. There's over 1 million new samples of malware that are released every day. Now, malware is not something we want. Malware is bad. That's malicious software. So there's 1 million new samples of this malware that are released every day. And we have a lot of cool technology that can catch that to stop that. But a lot of times when we're talking with those numbers, technology can't catch it. So it sneaks in and gets to us on our computer screen. So we need to know what to look out for. We'll talk about that in just a second. More than 99% of cyber attacks rely on human interaction to work. Maybe we click on a link that we shouldn't have. Maybe we give out too much information over the phone that we shouldn't have. Maybe we didn't update something that we shouldn't have. So the bad guys, over 99% of the time, need our help to get something done. So please keep that in mind. Very important. We'll talk about that in just a second. They also, the numbers show they're getting into the mobile malware market too. So that's like if you go to your Apple store or your Google Play store and you go in there and you want to download an app, at any given time, there's about 5,000 malicious apps that are in there that are designed to do bad things. At the given time right now, there's about 2 million of them that are out there, but about 5,000 of them they can sneak through and get some information from you that way. The numbers also show that they target over 7,500 businesses every day. I'm going to ask you a question and see who has who thinks they can answer this question. Please feel free to unmute. So if I'm a hacker and I target over 7,500 businesses every day, would you want to go after large, medium, or small companies? What do you think they go after? Any idea?
Small?
Yeah. Why would you want to go after small?
Well, having worked for a small company and having had this happen, we're not as defense-full, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
We don't see ourselves as a big apple on the tree, shall we say.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And they do that. They target the little guys. And a lot of times when these little guys, plus aren't there a ton more small companies than medium and large size companies combined? Because small business is what makes everything run. And so they know that too. The small companies probably don't have a budget. They probably they don't think they're a target. They don't have the things in place as a large company has. However, these bad guys are getting funded enough. You're seeing some of these bigger companies start getting attacked too. Like perhaps you remember the pipeline where they got attacked with the pipeline. The recent one, T-Mobile, they got hacked last 10 days or so. So they actually have enough resources to go after the large as well. So we'll kind of talk about that and how to defend ourselves and protect not only our company but our personal lives as well, because they kind of go hand in hand with a lot of people now. They also take over 30,000 plus websites that they hack. So they're busy doing bad things as well. This is the last number I want to show you in our class here for numbers. This is cybercrime costs annually worldwide. Anybody want to take a stab at that value? What do you see on your screen there? What is that value? You have to unmute to let me know.
I'm not very good. 6 trillion?
Yeah, you're right, Bonnie. It's 6 trillion. So this is cybercrime costs annually worldwide. It's costing businesses and individuals $6 trillion a year. And to put that, I just went to utahhealth.gov and I said, okay, let's put that in perspective. Your average age expectancy if you're a guy in Utah is 80 pretty much, and 82 if you're a gal. I want to challenge you guys to spend $6 trillion from birth to your average age, right? That's a lot of money. Who thinks they can spend it, right? I'll try, right? So if you're able to spend all of that money and you're a guy, you have to spend over $205 million every single day to spend all of that money, which is crazy. And again, a little over $200 million every day if you're a gal. But congratulations, you live longer, so you have more time to spend it, right? Which is crazy, right? So, and this is the crazy thing, and this is why I want to get the word out, is by the year 2025, they figure these costs will be $10.5 trillion per year. So we're going in the wrong direction. Let's talk about how we get those costs real quick. So if the bad guys are able to get into your personal life or your business, they can literally do a lot of bad things, right? For businesses, service disruption is a big deal. Like if your computers don't work at your company, for a lot of companies that stops business and that costs money. Intellectual property that they want, lots of any business information, some recovery costs, your personal recovery costs or business recovery costs go into these trillions of dollars that we're talking about. Reputational damage can really hurt businesses. There was a company along the Wasatch Front where he had a little finance company and had a company for about 20 years, about 18 or so employees. The bad guys got into his system and under 30 minutes, they wiped him out. Under 30 minutes, they wiped him out. And his reputation was one of those things that actually closed him down. The average cost for a company, for a small size company, is $600,000. And so we don't want that to happen to anybody. And when you get on a personal level, it's thousands of dollars, just depending on what they take and how they do it. Now, I want to ask a quick question here. I want you to think like a hacker. This is my favorite. This next slide that you see here is the favorite one of my whole deck. I hope Bonnie remembers this, the answer to this question. It's very important. This is a very important principle I want you guys to remember here. If you take anything from tonight, this is what I want you to remember. So let's pretend that we're all hacking right now, that we're all hackers and personal theft. The main reason why they hack is they want money, right? They can turn intellectual property or information into money. Now, personally identifiable information, or what they call PII, is any information that identifies who you are, such as your name, address, birthday, that kind of stuff. Now, on this next slide, I want someone bold enough to unmute and tell me on this next slide, what piece of information as a hacker do you want most from somebody? What do I want most on this next slide? Look through it and let me know. What do I want most on this slide if I can hack somebody's what?
Social security number.
Social security.
Absolutely. I love it, Julie. Yes, thank you. Social security number. Who? I think somebody else said the same thing.
Yeah,
Any
I
other
did.
thoughts?
Do you want me to say?
Let's give one more guess.
Okay.
One more guess. What do I want? Social security number is a good one.
I'm
Login credentials.
debit.
Oh, someone said it. Who said it?
Login credentials.
Adam said it.
Yeah.
Why did you say that?
Because then you have access to all the other stuff, because everybody has their social security number in somewhere floating around in their email. You can get birthdays, you can get all the other information through login stuff.
You're exactly right. If I have your login credential, I have everything else about you. If I have login credential to your bank, your personal finance stuff, and this is the crazy thing, if I have your login credential to your bank and I'm a hacker and I log into the bank as you, for the most part, does the bank know it's me or the hacker getting in? You or the hacker getting in? For the most part, they don't know that. So these things need to be kept very close to the chest, just like Adam said. That's the grand prize. I also want to, I'd be happy if I had access to your email. Why do I want your email? Because I can reset your credentials through your email. So those two things need to be kept guarded big time. And so we don't want to let anybody have that kind of stuff that you don't implicitly trust. So please keep that in mind. Let me give you a couple other things here. What I think, this is what you have either, at your business or perhaps at your house. You have all these locks on the door, right? These locks represent, like, in my mind, a firewall, antivirus, all these geeky things that you need to have in your life now. And this is the challenge. The more of these layers that you have in your life, the less convenience you have in your life. So security and convenience, they don't go together. And it's a really hard challenge for your IT guys or us to have, right? But we're not talking about hardware, software. We're talking about us. Let me give you a quick example of what I mean. I think we're responsible for our own doors. And I want you to think about this. Let's say that you're home and it's dark, and all of a sudden you hear a knock at the door. And if you're like me, you'd probably ignore it. So hopefully it goes away. But all of a sudden, what if you hear a bigger knock at the door and it's completely dark outside? What would you hopefully do? My hope is that before you open up the door, you'll probably turn on your Ring camera or something, or maybe you'll turn on the lights, maybe look through the peephole before you open up the door. That's the same concept that we have to have in our digital lives right now, because the bad guys are getting really good at knocking, getting us to open up that door to them. And the challenge is when we open up that door, we have no idea what they're going to do. And that's the scary part. So let's talk about that just for a second. This is what I want to emphasize a couple of times for a couple of minutes here. So we have locks on our door, right?
Matt,
Yeah.
I have a question on
Sure.
about the login credentials.
Mhm.
Most of my accounts now are asking for a two-step login. How is that how secure is that? Is that the way to go? Is that
100%. That is the way to go. 100%. Yeah, I'm actually going to talk about that in the next slide or two because it's so important. And that's why they need to have that, and the reasons why you need to have that. So the passwords, and we'll talk about that two-factor authentication for sure. Exactly, because it really represents another lock to your digital life, right? And that's what we need to have on that. So part of the locks on our digital lives are passwords, right? So if you have passwords that you're using that are on this list, your door is pretty much open to the bad guys, right? These are the most popular. These passwords have come from millions of breached accounts, and these are the most popular ones that have come to the top. So this is, again, passwords are where they want the most, and so we have to have good passwords there. So we're going to talk about that. So let's run through some password don'ts, because these are very, very important, because these are as basic as you can get, and when we have good basics, it makes it really hard for them to get into our lives. So there was a guy that was doing a cybersecurity degree back east, and part of his degree, he took a billion username and passwords that were compromised, a billion of them, and he analyzed them. And he found that 1 in 142 of them was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we don't want to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's not a good lock on your digital life, right? So, you shouldn't share with coworkers, that kind of stuff. You shouldn't use dictionary words for passwords because they can run through dictionary and break those. Like if I use a mountain for a password, you shouldn't use something like that. You shouldn't save passwords to browsers. So I hope you know what I mean by that. So you type in your username and password, and your Google Chrome pops up and says, hey, do you want me to save that password? You should say no. Because if I have access to your computer as a bad guy, the first place I'm going to go is your browser, because all of those are stored, and within 2 or 3 clicks, I can have all of your passwords. So please don't, if they're in there, we need to get them out of there, right? Because that's the first place I want to go to find those. Any questions on that? We all clear on that? So don't save them there. That's not a safe place to do.
I do have a question on the dictionary words.
Uh-huh.
What if you have 2 different words? Is that sometimes when I use my combination of 2 different words, it tells me that's a strong password. Should I believe them? I do use, like one of the little other figures. I mean, I don't know, like the symbol.
That's good.
Another like a symbol in there, obviously in capital letters.
That's good. You're on the right track.
Okay.
You're on the right track. The next slide will actually, that's a great question. The next slide will actually address that for you.
Okay.
Great question. So yeah, the reason why
Matt?
well, go ahead. Yeah.
How do you find out if you have them on your browser, passwords on your browser?
Or how do you clear them out?
Get rid of them?
I'll send Bonnie a couple of documents that will show you how to do that.
Okay, great.
I'll give you a step-by-step on how to do that. So she can share that with you. And depending on your browser, it's a little bit different, but it's easy to clear them out. You got to make sure that if you need them, you need to make sure there's, but I'll give you the ability, I'll forward that on to Bonnie as well. Good questions. I like that. Excellent. The reason why we're talking about these passwords is because 80% of the confirmed data breaches involve a weak or they stole a password. So 80% of the time they're getting in is right through the front door. They're popping that lock and getting in. So that's why we're talking about that and the importance of just the cybersecurity basic stuff. So this is stuff that we should be doing. Now, these are answers some of the questions that you guys had. This is coming from the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's a great government agency that keeps track of the latest stuff based on good research. And this is what we should be doing. This is newer stuff. And so this is their latest recommendations that might, if you go to work, they might not be following this because this is new stuff as well. So obviously I have to have a different password for each account, because if I use the same password elsewhere, Hacker 101 tells me, well, I'm going to try that same different places and I'm probably going to get in. So different passwords for each account. Okay, that's what we need to have. I know it's inconvenient, but that's what we need to do. The recommendation is this: changing your password only if it's necessary to do so. Okay, And so their latest research showed this. When we're at work and we're prompted to change our passwords, the majority of us keep the same password and like bump it up a number, right? So if that password was breached on some place that from a business that you do business with, and that's been breached, and I use that username and password elsewhere, they can do that. Now, changing it if necessary, if I get that and I bump it up a number, and then all I have to do as a hacker is bump it up another number, and I'm probably going to get in. So they're changing it only if necessary. What their thought process is now is making it harder for the bad guys, easier for us. Now, these special characters that you were supposed to use, right, and to make it, and that's what everybody wants you to do, to make it strong. If you're using these special characters in a password, and your password is only 8 characters long, and I have the ability to just automatically try different passwords on that account as a bad guy, I can break that 8-character password in 3 minutes. That's all it takes to break that password. And so what we're trying to do is make it harder for them, easier. So phrases and length are what I want to see. If you can use a 15-character passphrase, then it becomes hundreds of years for me to break that because I can't run through that many abilities. So that's a really strong lock on your door, is the length.
I have a suggestion as far as coming up with something that looks completely random letters, and you can throw in some capitals and like special characters, but kind of a longer acronym for something. So I have a song with a longer song title that's a favorite song, and so I've just taken the first letter of each of those words in the song title, and when you look at it, it looks completely random. And I don't know if that's, but it also helps you remember, because if you make up a random one, there's way too hard to remember.
You mean like this one?
Yeah.
What's this one?
Is that that's got to be for something, but that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you can get the length pretty easy. I'll get you started on this one. The hills are what?
Live with
The Sound of Music. Excellent. And the last part, I'm just a poor boy from a poor family, right? So you can put those together and get the length pretty easy. The next question I get is this, right? Can I use like words in the dictionary and put them together? Yeah, you can use that. Is this BYU, Utah, Jazz, Rail, Salt Lake, Bee Sting, is that found in the dictionary? No, but that would make sense to me. Just like kind of Fran was talking about earlier. So that length is very, very important to have there. So that stops them. They just can't break your door. They're going to go on to somebody else's that they can break. And so that's what we want to see there for sure as well. Now, somebody mentioned it earlier. I can't remember who it was, but the 2-factor authentication is that deadbolt to your life. I think it was Russell that talked about that. And so, yeah, and you can use a password. Does anybody here use a password manager that manages their passwords for them?
Yeah, I have one on my iPad that Passable. It's a password lock.
Okay, perfect.
Program.
Those are great because they manage your passwords in an encrypted and secure manner. It kind of acts like your browser does, but it makes it in a secure manner. And that's what you want. You can use a password manager and 2-factor authentication. That's the best secure and convenience at the same time. Let me give you an example of what the 2-factor authentication is and the power of this. So let's say the hacker at the top of the screen just broke into your bank account, or in my bank account. I have it set up on my phone. So all of a sudden we're sitting here in this meeting and I get a notification to my phone saying, hey, here's your second code to get in. Well, I now know something very important. I now know that the hacker has popped off one of the locks on my digital life, and I need to go change that lock. If I don't have 2-factor authentication, he's into my account. This is why you want to have that, right? So he's not going to get in, and that's that digital deadbolt to your life, that 2-factor authentication is. And so that's what we want to see there, It takes about, 6 to 10 seconds more to get in, but it's a big, big deal. Most of us, I would guess, have 2 locks on your front door. The digital deadbolt, this 2-factor authentication is that second lock. You're really doing the same thing when you go to the gas station, right? You put your debit or credit card in the machine, and the machine asks you for your zip or your PIN. It's the same kind of concept there to kind of make sure it's you. Very important stuff. It needs to be set up on your bank account. It needs to be set up on your anything social media, any of that kind of stuff. Here's some products that you can use. You're more than welcome to take a picture of this and see what you can use here. You can see where it says app. Those you can download from the App Store, and those are free. They don't cost you any money. I use the Google Authenticator. I use the Microsoft Authenticator. I use the Authy. What they do is they say, okay, I'm going to link them to that account on my bank. And it says, okay, your bank says, okay, you're trying to get in, but it dings you here to make sure that it's you. Now, the Google Authenticator is pretty good because it lives on your device and doesn't have to send a text message or anywhere. So it just gives you a rotating number, and you put that rotating number within like 30 seconds. And it says, yep, that's you. I know it's you because you're giving me the right number, and it lets you in. And so that is a very, very important thing that we have to set up in our lives. I can give you some more documentation on how to do that, how to get started. If you don't have it, this kind of stuff that can stop over 99% of cyber attacks, this is what can stop it on all your stuff. Now, if you want to use a password manager, they're great. You need to know one password, and it manages everything else for you. I recommend those. We're talking about security and convenience at the same time. So good stuff there. Any questions on that at all? You okay on that?
Can I just ask you, so when I've had this, when I worked, I'd have them for different programs that I went into. That was already set up.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to do our bank accounts. Would I work with the bank to do that? I mean, actually, I think I did one of the bank accounts. They set it up for me. Can the other, is that typical? They can set it up so that you can have that prompt that somebody's withdrawn from your bank account. That's, they text you that kind of often.
Yeah, like I know Wells Fargo, Chase, most of the credit unions offer that very easily. What you do is you usually like take a picture of a QR code or something like that, and it links it to your device. And then you say, what authenticator app do you want to put on there? And it just does it. I'll forward you some more information on that as well.
Okay.
But these are very important. I don't know of any bank or credit union that doesn't offer this. Facebook offers it. Amazon offers it. It's pretty easy to step through and set it up. It's just a matter of people needing to do it. It's a big, big deal that can stop attacks over 99% of the time that could come to us as people just out and about, right? And so I know some people or businesses use the keys at the bottom. And so those keys actually stay with you and you put them into your USB drive, and that's how it verifies who you are as well. Those are like 20 to 50 bucks, depending on what type of specials they're running, but the apps are all free. A password manager can cost you like $30 a year, and you can put it on you can put it on your mobile device, you can put it on your laptop, you can put it on your desktop, and it manages all those for you. A very good thing to do. Makes your life super convenient, and highly recommend that for sure as well. But I think we're out of time, and so we can stop there, and I can give you some more information there. If you want to learn a little bit more, I'd be happy to spend a few more minutes with you. But if you have questions, please let me know.
You know what? We've opened it up for you participants. I told Matt go for a half hour, but if you're interested, he can go give you more information. some of you speak up and let us know what you want. This is your forum or your time.
More, excuse me, more.
More? We have one vote for more.
I'm for more too.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
vote for more.
Okay. If you want to leave, if you have to leave, please feel free to do that. I have a couple other things I want to show you as far as some of the techniques that they use that you need to recognize. The latest that they're doing now. So that was
Can
our
I
next-
ask a question?
Sure.
Basically, okay, I'm 77, I'm retired, and one of the things, I mean, it just drives me crazy to have to remember passwords and change everything for all my accounts and all this. So what should I do? I mean, I'm gonna be so crazy, I'm not gonna even want to use my computer.
Now, you probably have the luxury of not having to log in. That most people log into 100 different things. That's on average, right? Which is crazy. And that's why you want to use a password manager. I would recommend to you is now you could write your passwords down. Just write your passwords down.
Which I do, but I've got 3 pages of them.
Yeah, you got 3 pages of them. I write some of mine down as well. I would recommend the 2-factor authentication on all of that stuff that you need to do. And you can keep I would make sure your passwords are passphrases and the 2-factor authentication. If you want to use a password manager and set that up, it's going to be some work for you, right? Once you get it set up, the only thing you have to remember is 1 password, and it knows where everything else goes from there. If you don't want to go through that kind of stuff, I would just kind of go through your passwords and make sure that they're long passphrases and set up 2-factor authentication. That's the easiest route for you to get the best protection for you.
So basically, I can't have Google save them.
It's not the safest thing to do, because if I send you, and that's what I want to talk about next, is if I send you something that gets you to click on a link and gives me access to your machine, then I can start moving around in your machine and grab those from you as well. So I would set up the 2-factor authentication for sure.
I have one other question, and that's on like Family Search. Okay, I've got probably not the strongest thing on Family Search, because I'm thinking, well, I really don't care if they have all my ancestors or whatever. But now I'm thinking about, I have an account on there that has my email and stuff on there.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And the church has their own authenticator apps. The church is very, very good at the security stuff. At least they're getting a lot better than they used to be on that as well. So yeah, you have to just kind of think about that information. You're probably okay on that, but they can look up things as well. A lot of people think, mother's maiden name, that kind of stuff as a good security question, but on Family Search, I can find that information as a security question, right? So that kind of stuff as well. That's a good question.
Okay.
Matt?
Yeah.
I didn't know if you were planning on showing that video that you showed us about the man on the street asking people.
I actually wasn't for time's sake. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I like the live for, because it will work for some people depending on their internet connection, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm not going to show that video or any video tonight just because of that. But
Okay.
It's a great video.
It is.
It's a really good video. So yeah. And it has to do with social engineering. Go ahead. A question?
Yeah, I've got a request. If you could spend a minute or two talking about virtual private networks, VPNs.
VPNs, yes. Virtual private networks. So a lot of businesses will use that, right? And so when it's properly set up, I can go, it digs myself a secure tunnel through the internet. And so all the information going back and forth can't be gotten by a bad guy, and it makes sure everything is safe on that. And so very important to use, especially if you're working from home. I actually have one when I'm using them all the time on my personal life as well. So I have a VPN that I use that encrypts all my information so you can't see what I'm doing and going back and forth and all that kind of stuff. I think they're great. They're fantastic.
Matt, how do you get a VPN? Are there businesses that you need to, don't you pay for a VPN?
Yeah, like there's a bunch of them out there. You can search them up. Like one that comes to mind is like NordVPN, or a lot of the antivirus companies have a VPN as well service that it slows you down a little bit, your internet, because it's building so many different things to protect you through the internet. But yeah, those are VPNs that you can use that help you stay safe as well, for sure. I'm testing out one right now. I've been testing it out for 6 months or so now, called Surfshark, and it seems to be working pretty good. I have it on my mobile device. I have it on my laptop too. It just automatically loads up. When I turn on my computer in the morning, it's one of those programs that say, okay, I'm going to start digging you a tunnel as everything else going on. And it says, okay, I'm connected. Go ahead. It gives me how well it's doing and stuff. Sometimes it slows me down a little bit because it's building a secure tunnel, but overall it seems like it's working pretty well. So those are very, very good things to have. They help keep you, especially if you're out and about. If I'm going to use an open Wi-Fi, you should never use an open Wi-Fi like at a McDonald's or whatever. If you're going there, you should never jump onto that, because that's something that you can get hacked on as well, because they can see a lot of that information going back and forth. And then a VPN helps protect that as well.
Matt,
And that's wherever you go, that VPN, if you're in the airport, anywhere, it's that security. And do
Yes.
you talk to your, like we have Verizon, do you talk to Verizon about that VPN, or it's an outside business then?
You can talk to Verizon. So if you're on your mobile device, so if you're in like McDonald's or wherever you like to go, and they offer free Wi-Fi, and if you have a properly set up VPN, you can jump onto that network and be safe if the VPN is working properly. Or you can actually use your signal on your phone. You can use your phone signal, and because that information going to the nearest tower is encrypted and no one can see that information. So that's better for you to use as well.
Can you talk about also a guest Wi-Fi password? Because I get my nieces and nephews, what's your Wi-Fi password? Didn't we talk about that? How do you get a guest Wi-Fi password?
Yeah, that's a great thing, especially a lot of people are working from home. And so if you're working from home and someone comes into your house and they say, what's your Wi-Fi password? And you give it to them and their device is infected with something, you can potentially get infected as well. So a guest network is something to say, okay, I can give you that guest network over here. So I'm over here on my own little internet, and I'm going to give you your own little guest over here. And that's the internet that you use. So you can't get to me. There's 100 different ways to set up a guest network. It just depends on what type of internet service provider you use. You can go in and search it up on Google and say, if you use Comcast, or if you use whatever, the million of them that are out there, you can say, how do I set up a guest network? And they'll give you instructions on how to set that up. That's the best thing to do if you have guests. It keeps you safe.
Matt, can I share my experience with Surfshark?
Yeah.
I've been using it for about a year.
Okay.
Some of the advantages that I've found is that, at least when I signed up for it, you could install it on unlimited number of devices.
Yep.
And to me, that is more has more utility than a single password on a router or a single VPN on a router.
That's right.
It only protects your home environment. It doesn't follow you to an airport or. So I like them installed on the local machine.
Yeah, that's a great.
There, and NordVPN you mentioned, that's one of the top selling VPNs.
Yeah, you can look up a bunch of them and just kind of do some research on them and see. That's a pretty good thing to keep yourself safe and anonymous online and to make sure things are as safe as you can get them, right?
Is it desirable to get the most popular one, or does that mean that more hackers are, maybe get familiar with that and be able to hack it?
That's a good question. The more popular ones would tend to be a target, right? As you're thinking like a hacker. I think for the most part, they're pretty darn good. Nothing's perfect by any means, but something is better than nothing, but can they hack it? And that's why it's important to update stuff all the time. Sometimes you get tired of, hey, Microsoft needs to update something or whatever needs to update something. It's very important that you do that because those updates fix those potential ways that bad guys can get in. It's very important that you do that as well.
I use my Face ID for several things on my phone. How do you feel about that security wise?
Yeah, that's pretty good. It's better than nothing for sure. I think a fingerprint's just a little bit better. Do you have an iPhone?
I do, yes.
Yeah. I've seen a couple of people actually take pictures of somebody else and kind of position it right and got it to open up. But it's better than nothing for sure. Yeah, it's convenient, so it's better than nothing.
Right. So it'd be better to do it only on ones where you have another type of authentication, I'm assuming.
Yeah, if you have another way to, a lot of times people just use it again in their phone, right? Just unlocks my phone, which, for the most part, you're probably going to be okay, not a problem. I like the fingerprint reader just because it takes your fingerprint a little bit more biometric. So yeah. Good questions. I like it. Any other questions? We're all professionals. Okay. Excellent questions. Yeah.
I don't have a question, but I have a suggestion for everyone. I have a friend whose husband passed suddenly, and he had all his passwords, everything password protected, and his Apple phone password protected, but he had not shared it with his wife. And all the finances were on the phone, and it was a real hassle. Very, very difficult for her to reach. So anyway, just a tip, share with your spouse.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that. Thank you for that. My parents are in the same boat, and they're in almost 80. And I tell them to write their passwords down and share them. So it makes life a lot easier. Don't be afraid of doing that. I think if someone was going to come into my house, break into my house, I don't think they're looking for my passwords. So I think when we're at home, it's a little bit easier to do that kind of stuff. When we're at work, we need to make sure that we're keeping those tight. But again, when we're at home, I recommend writing those down just for that reason.
Matt, share that story about, were you at the bank, you were at someone's cubicle and you saw a password on the, why don't you share that story?
Yeah, so I get a lot of people that ask me questions like you guys are, and I love to talk with them. And so I'm at a big high-rise office building in Salt Lake City, and the controller asks me a question, and they're at the top of the building. They have a beautiful view of downtown Salt Lake. And she has one of these big monitors there. It's a big Apple. And I come around to her side of her computer screen, and she has a laminated sticky note that's on the side of her computer screen, laminated. I said, what's that to? And she says, that's our username and password to our corporate bank account. I said, what? And so I did something. I took my phone and I took a picture of it. And she says, you can't do that. I says, yeah, I can. It's just sitting right there. And I said, why is it sitting on the side of your screen? And she says, because they make me change my password every 30 days. And so I'm like, you can't put it there as well. So when I go into offices all the time, I'll pick up people's keyboards, and more times than not, I'll find passwords there, right? And if it's not there, I'll sit down in their desk and I'll open up their desk drawer, and there's a bunch of passwords sitting there too, in offices too. So she doesn't do that anymore after our little chat. So, but yeah, it's just one of those things where you just have to be careful on what you're doing and stuff. So yeah, crazy stuff. I see a lot of crazy stuff. We could spend the rest of the night just talking about all the stories that I've come into. It's crazy. Yeah, good questions. Good questions. I like it a lot. We can end on this if you want. I want to really emphasize social engineering here, because these are the techniques that they come at us with, and I want you to recognize these. And they come at all of us with these. And so please take notes, do whatever. And this is where I like to share those videos with people, but we don't have time to do that tonight. But I want to explain to you what it is and the importance of it. And so part of what I do is, as part of a training, in addition to training, we test people. And we test people using social engineering techniques that we're going to talk about right now. And so far, this is going into our 5th year now with over 60,000 people. When we use social engineering techniques, I've gotten into companies or individuals 100% of the time. And so I want you to make sure that if you can recognize these, you can stop that immediately. So please pay attention to this. So there are techniques used. Yeah, go ahead.
Before you go on, what if you're acquainted with a person that has trouble keeping track of their phone, their iPad, and so on? What is the best way to protect that individual and help them so they don't get hacked?
To help them not get hacked?
Yes.
Talk to them about this right here. Talk to them about the passwords, the dual factor authentication, and this social engineering. Really important here, for sure. This will help them to stay safe, for sure.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And so this social engineering, again, they're techniques used by bad guys trying to get our PII, our personally identifiable information from us. And if those bad guys can establish trust with us somehow, some way, and they're asking us for any type of PII, we're more likely to give it to them, right? And so I want you to pay attention to this. A lot of times they'll come at us through email. 92% of the time, bad guys will come at us through email, because that's the kind of information that we give businesses. And if those businesses get hacked through no fault of your own, well, they have your information. And business email compromise is one of those things I want you to pay attention to, not only for business, but it's individual email compromise too. And we'll talk about that in just a second. They'll have you click on links and download stuff using these techniques that we're going to talk about. My guess is if you're like me, most of you are getting weird text messages on your phone. Anybody getting weird text messages on their phone? Yep. That's like me too. Have you noticed that there's links inside those text messages? Yeah. So I'm getting the same thing. There was a company that the employee left his business, left his company to go get lunch. He gets a text message from his buddy whose social media account had been hacked by a bad guy. It said, look at the latest pictures from my trip. He gets and clicks on that from his text message on his phone. Nothing happened. He didn't think anything of it. He comes back into the office and his mobile device was allowed on the internal network instead of the guest network at work. The next day they were ransomware for $45,000 and it came through a text message. Please be aware of those. Do not click on any of that stuff. I'm seeing a huge increase in those. An example would be, hey, your Amazon account has been charged $3,000 for a TV. I got one of those the other day, right? Click on this link here to verify that, right? That's all they need you to do, and you can have stuff like that. So please be aware of that kind of stuff. They don't do that, but bad guys do. Okay, so please be aware of that kind of stuff. It's coming, and not only texting, but email, all that kind of stuff as well. Social media is a big deal, as well as I'm sure you're like me, you get weird phone calls all the time too, right? Your car warranty is expired or whatever. That information's been leaked out online, and then the bad guys are picking it up, using it against us. They really take our human nature and turn it against us for our own good, because they need our help, right? They need us to click on that link. They need us to give out that information. And so these are the things I want you to be aware of here. Let me show you this here. Let me see. Well, let me go through some business email compromise. This is very important for us here. Now, let's say on a personal note, I'm going to put it on an individual email compromise here. Let's say the guy at the bottom right on this screen here, let's say that he's a family member, and a family member gets their computer or their device taken over by a bad guy. A bad guy sits there, and all of a sudden they go through the email list and they say, oh my goodness, such and such is in their contact list, and all of a sudden you get an email from this account that has been compromised by someone that you trust. And it wants you to click on that link or open up that document. You're more likely to do that because you trust it, right? Because it's coming from that person. Because when they have access to that account, that email account, that's a real email coming to you. It's not a fake one, it's a real email because it's actually coming from their email account. These types of attacks have increased over 600% since COVID has started. So I want you to pay attention to these. It will come from a compromised account that looks like it's real. Ask you to do wire transfers, to get gift cards, to pay invoices if you're a business. Asking you for any type of PII that we talked about earlier, that kind of stuff. I'll give you a quick story of what happened to a company. Okay, this company has been in business for 20 years. This happened 2 weeks ago. The controller of the company gets an email from a company that they haven't done business with in 10 years. It says, you need to pay us. You're late on your payment paying us. You need to, they're using these social engineering techniques that we're going to talk about in just a second, next slide here. And you need to pay us or we're going to sue you. If you pay us in a wire transfer, we won't sue you and you can pay us by the end of the week. So they're going back and forth. It's Friday afternoon. The controller says, okay, I've set up a wire transfer to pay you. In the history of their company, they've never paid anyone in a wire transfer in the history of their company. And so she sets up the wire transfer and sends it to the bad guys thinking it was one of their people. And so she sends it off and it was $46,000 that was sent to the bad guys because she thought it was legitimate. All she had to do was call them and verify that situation. And it revolved around trust, thinking that it was there. These are huge attacks that we need to make sure that we recognize as well. Let me jump to this for the last part here. These are the techniques I want you to realize that we'll end with here. So they use greed, fear, urgency, curiosity, respect for authority, sympathy, helpfulness, confusion, and trust. When I use these techniques here against people, I've always gotten in 100% of the time. That's why I want you to recognize these right here. Let me give you an example of one. Let's say fear. I, as a hacker, can send out an email to people that I found, and I can say, well, if you click on this link or give me your credit card information, I'll have the cure for COVID, that kind of stuff. They use those types of attacks against us. Sympathy, that kind of stuff, helpfulness. We can be too helpful as a person as well. And we can trust too much. And so we're really living in the world now that we shouldn't really trust much unless we verify that kind of stuff. The verification is a big, big deal. Just don't, if you get an email that comes in and says, hey, do this, now you have to verify that kind of stuff. We're getting more and more of that, like I mentioned earlier, the Amazon kind of stuff, the Facebook kind of stuff, all that kind of stuff we have to be very cautious of. And if it's asking you for any type of information, let me give you one last thing here. Let me show you an example. Fast forward to an example here. So here's an example of a bad guy using these techniques here. And we can end on this. So I actually got this phishing email that came to me. And I want you to be aware of two things on this. The top is 3 things that could happen to me on the top. It can be a real email, like we just talked about in the business email compromise situation. It can be a spoofed email, meaning it looks like it's real, but it's not. Or it can be totally incorrect. This email is a totally incorrect email. I had no idea where this was coming from, but it's trying to be like an IT type company, right? It's a Gmail one that looks a little suspicious. There's here on the link, there's 2 things I want you to be aware of on this. If I click on that link, I've opened up my door to the bad guy. I could download malware or some type of bad thing to my computer, which I don't want to do, right? Or if I click on that link, it's going to take me to a link such as this one did, and it asking me for something. Let me show you what this does here. We can end on this. This is what I want you to pay attention to, not only in email, but texting, all that kind of stuff. So in the text, in the top part here in the subject line, it says important security upgrade. What psychological technique is that? That with 3 words, the bad guys built a psychological technique of urgency. See that right there? That's what I want you to pay attention to. Well, they're using urgency there, right? Check mark there. Everyone, our company has fallen victim to cybercrime. We need to verify who you are in the system. Well, our company has fallen victim to cybercrime. That's trying to build a little bit of respect for authority here, some fear, right? And some more urgency. That's the kind of stuff I want you to look out for. These are the types of things that stop attacks. You need to verify who you are in the system. Well, that sounds to me, they're trying to build some respect for authority being in IT and some more urgency there, right? Now, this is the biggest red flag in the whole email. I don't care if I'm not looking at where it's coming from or if I'm looking at the link. This next line is the biggest red flag in anything that you get. What am I asking for, or what are the bad guys asking for in that email? What do they want?
The password, username.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting how they just do it gradual to that. That was at the first step. It was a gradual thing to where you work your way into answering all those questions.
100%. It's exactly right. They're trying to build that trust. They're trying to build all that kind of stuff in there. And that's the biggest red flag of anything. Nobody needs your username and password. Nobody needs it unless it's someone you implicitly trust, right? And so that's the biggest red flag in this email. They want my digital keys. Now, if that email said, quickly give me your social security number, would people do it? You probably won't do it, right? But they'll give out that username and password. That needs to be on the same level. Nobody needs that kind of stuff because 80% of the time they get in is through things like this, okay? Now, the system will update us when you completed your login, respect for authority, helpfulness there. Again, they threw in some more urgency at the end. get this done ASAP, right? Some more urgency there. And a very generic IT at the end, that's very generic. Now, if you're looking at this, hopefully if you get emails like this or text like this, you'll be able to say, wait a minute, I'm recognizing these techniques here that doesn't make sense to me. The biggest thing that we can do is this next step, and we can end right here. If you look at this email and you're reading through it, and I hope you'll look at these in the future, say this has a bunch of social engineering with those psychological techniques that I looked at before. So if you go ahead and you hit, well, if I hit reply to this and say, IT, do I really need to do this? Where's that email going? It's going back to the bad guy, right? And of course, they're going to respond and say, hurry up, you're the last one, right? They're going to do whatever they can do to get you to do something. So the most important thing here is this. I have to do something called out of band communication. In this case, I can't communicate with this person in any other way. So that's another red flag. But out of band communication, if this is coming from someone that you trust and it's asking you for this, I need to step out of that band of communication and call them, send them a text, do something like that to verify this situation. If that lady would have done that in that email that she got from that invoice, she would have never sent $46,000 to the bad guys. So that's the biggest thing at the out of band communication. This is where when we recognize these types of techniques, we really can't trust anymore like we used to, because the bad guys know that and they're playing us like puppets. That's what we don't want them to do. Again, the biggest red flag is don't give out your username and password to anybody. No one needs that except for you. So I've talked way too much and I apologize for that. So I've kept you here way too long. So any other questions, that kind of stuff?
This has been excellent. Thank you so much.
Great
I'm
tips,
glad.
Matt. Real important stuff.
So this is
Yeah, I
gonna
hope
be-
so.
It's going to be on our little Cottonwood emergency preparedness YouTube, and then also we'll have a link to it on the Facebook page, so that if you want to go back through or share it with your family so that they can be protected as well, that link can be found there.
Thank you.
Tell your family that you're sending them a link so they don't think that it's a bad guy.
That's right.
Exactly.
Nice, attaboy.
Actually, you're going to go search for it yourself. Avoid it.
Mark,
So,
a quick
Bonnie-
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned some video clips that you weren't able to share with us tonight because of time. Is that something you could share with Bonnie and that she could distribute? Or is that too proprietary?
No, it's not proprietary. They're on YouTube.
Oh.
I've just kind of carved them up to make points for it. I can
Maybe
probably
just,
try sending them to you, and you can recognize those techniques that we talked about. Bonnie, will you send me an email reminding me to send you those documents and stuff that people want, and kind of how to protect our home, stuff like that?
Yes, I will.
If you do that, I'll send it to you after my stuff I've got going on tomorrow. So that'll be good, and you can share that with everybody. So the only thing that once I share those documents with her, the only thing it needs is when you click a link, I just need your credit card number and your username and password. Right?
Orange child, all that stuff.
But that's all, right? But then you can have them. So hopefully you learned something new. Feel free to share it with everybody. There's more to go over, but we just don't have time. So I think we hit the really main important points there as best we could in the time that we had. So
We appreciate you so much, Matt. Thank you. I think we